Welcome back, everyone. So I wanted to show you this particular slide. It was published in the Lancet Public Health. I think it was based on a really huge study following. It was more of an observational meta-analysis study, but following people in 20 countries, about 400,000 people were involved with this. And you know, it's just really kind of interesting. One of the reasons they believe that there was higher risk of death, and was death from heart disease with the low carb diet, was that they think that people who replace the carb with more animal proteins and animal fat created a more unhealthy situation, as opposed to the people who were on a lower carb diet and included more plant sources of protein in the diet. So
would you have recommended more of a vegetarian diet then, with carbs incorporated in it?
Yeah, and certainly not to be excessive in terms of meat intake. Choose leaner protein sources, but also try to include other sources of protein that would be more vegetable, like beans and nuts, and seeds, and so on. So I just thought that was interesting. And anyway, definitions. A ketogenic diet is a very, very low carbohydrate diet, 20 to 50 grams a day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people think they're on a keto diet, but really they're on basically a low carbohydrate diet, which is a lot more reasonable if you wanted to follow this, of 50 to 130 grams of carb per day. But there aren't exact definitions for that. So a ketogenic diet, I did not realize this, but it's also a diet it's moderate in protein, and it's very high in fat. That's part of how the diet works. It's high in fat. Yeah. Whereas just a low carbohydrate diet, with that slightly higher amounts of carbohydrate, that one is more of a high protein diet. So that's more like Atkins, Salt Beach, some of those other diets. So there is that distinction.
So Atkins would be actually healthier than the keto. The keto, if you're going to go on a low carb diet.
I would think so. But the keto diet, one of my colleagues just did a great presentation on carbohydrate and included a lot about the keto diet. And there are some studies that show benefits, and I think what we need, there are benefits even in diabetes and in weight loss, but we need longer studies. What is the result of being on this diet over a long period of time, and can it be sustained? And
where's the paleo diet falling in?
Paleo diet is a low carbohydrate diet. Yeah. And and there are other diets that have varying amounts of carbohydrate that are very healthy diets, and that get their carb mostly from plant sources. So you could think of for example, a Mediterranean diet or dietary approaches to stop hypertension. Those are really, really good healthy diets, really ones to include. So ketogenic diet isn't new. It was used about 100 years ago. It was the only diet that they could use for people who had type 1 diabetes. Children diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, their bodies stopped making any insulin at all. And this was the diet that kept them alive a little bit longer. Ultimately, having type 1 diabetes then was a death sentence. Insulin hadn't been invented. And they did succumb to the disease, but they, gained a little bit of time with this diet. And then around the same time, it was used for treatment of epilepsy. And it's still used as treatment for epilepsy. It's almost like it's come back a little bit more now. So it's not new. And it's being considered as possible treatment for managing blood glucose in people with diabetes, particularly type 2 diabetes. So, so looking at both weight loss and improved glucose control, there's a big difference between ketosis, like nutritional ketosis. Your body is producing ketones, but it's not the same as ketoacidosis, which can affect someone who has type 1 diabetes and doesn't have enough insulin, and that refers to a really high acidic level in the blood, and it's a dangerous condition. So nutritional ketosis versus ketoacidosis are different things. Mentioned about red meat, and it's interesting, throughout the world as countries become more wealthy, they prefer including more animal-based foods, like more meat. And so I suspect it's kind of built in that these are things that we find very satisfying to include some meat in the diet. Yeah. So physiology of the keto diet. When the body's deprived of carbohydrate, insulin secretion is reduced, and the body enters a state where eventually it uses an alternative form of energy. So in a series of multiple steps, these ketones are produced, and they replace glucose as a primary energy source. So fats are broken down, and ketones are formed. Then ketones are released from the liver, and they're used as an energy source. Also, initially, there's often significant weight loss with this type of diet because of the mobilization of glycogen, that stored form of carbohydrate. And one of the risks with the keto diet is actually dehydration. That's something to be aware of. So here you can see where the carbohydrate stores are released into the blood, and after those are depleted, the fat stores are mobilized. Fatty acids go to the liver, and they are transformed into ketones. So here are some drawbacks, however. So since you're not eating very much of these kinds of foods, you are missing the nutrients from those foods too. So what does that mean over a long period of time, not to have some of these nutrients? Also, if you do have diabetes and are on, like for example, glyburide, that would be a secretagogue or insulin, you are at much higher risk for a low blood sugar. So don't start the plan without checking with your doctor. Avoid this kind of diet during pregnancy. SGLT2 is a particular diabetes medication. You shouldn't be on this diet if you're on that medication. And avoid it if you have kidney disease. So some people talk about how they don't feel that great when they start this diet. They even call it like the keto flu. They feel tired. They feel, this is kind of not themselves. There's, the diet might cost a little bit more. There's kind of that fruity breath smell because your body's getting rid of ketones that way too. And then there's that questionable long-term adherence. And just in general, extreme diets people have a hard time sustaining those over a long period of time, whether it's really high carb or really low carb. we tend to come back to that middle range of carbohydrates. So it's just interesting to see how, how this will play out. And as far as carbohydrates in diabetes, what is the ideal amount? It's inconclusive. I mean, that's in the latest guidelines, that it's inconclusive. Most people with diabetes report a lower to moderate intake of carbohydrate. Also, it's as I said before, it's difficult to change eating patterns and to be on extreme diets. So you see that on both ends of the spectrum. But what is important is optimizing blood glucose management by monitoring intake and what your body's response is to carbohydrate. So, and to include regular physical activity, because that can be as beneficial as a medication in helping to bring down blood sugars.
Mary, I had a question online. A friend of the person that posed the question is a physician who has brain cancer, and he's eating a keto diet in an attempt to affect his cancer. He's thinking that it's helping, but it's been difficult for him to maintain. Do you have any information about a keto diet and its effects on cancer?
Yeah. I don't have any information other than reading that. I honestly don't have any information that I can really speak to, but I can get some information. I can do a search about it. I just saw it mentioned in one line in an article, and I can't remember exactly what it said.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
I would be happy to do some research and get back to that person.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I just want to say a couple things about carbohydrate and prevention of diabetes. There is some interest in having a low carbohydrate diet and see if that has influence in preventing diabetes. We do have good information about these diets. Like, I can speak to the diabetes prevention program. That was a low-fat diet, so it had a bit more carbohydrate, and it had phenomenal results. They actually asked people to count fat grams. There was a 58% reduction in the progression to diabetes. And what they wanted people to achieve was a weight loss of 7% body weight. And they needed to have the participants count something. So they thought it would be easier to have them decrease overall calories by counting fat grams. And it worked. So, they included physical activity, 30 minutes, the equivalent of, say, 30 minutes of walking 5 times a week. In any case, so we know that this type of diet, with kind of lower fat, moderate, healthy carbs, is, along with weight loss and exercise, is helpful in preventing diabetes. Now, other types of diets might also be helpful and maybe even more helpful, but we don't know that. We do know about these, though.
So when you say in something like this low-fat diet,
Yeah.
so it's low-fat, and then when you talk about the carbs, are you including vegetables in carbs?
Yeah, I mean, it was,
What's the definition of carbs?
Yeah, it was, the vegetables could be included in, certainly the starchy vegetables, but also, just in total. Because, once you decrease one nutrient, that has an influence on the other macronutrients, like you're decreasing fat, so you're probably, potentially decreasing protein a little bit, and just to, have the calories even out, probably increasing, the percent of calories from carbohydrate in that diet.
And so by carbohydrate, can you just, like what?
Oh, like carbohydrates, like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, rice, all beans. Yeah.
So that's pretty much everything except animal.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a whole, it's a whole range of carbohydrates. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. So, in any case, so these are some really good resources to look at as far as some healthy eating plans, and they are in your handout. Just want to say a little bit about high fructose corn syrup. I did quite a big search about high fructose corn syrup, and what I found was there were a lot of animal studies, rodent studies, that showed a possible link to everything from asthma, chronic bronchitis, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, colorectal cancer. So, but there were problems as far as strength of evidence. There were animal studies, not human studies, the length of time. There were, little bits of correlation, like just, oh, this and this happened. They're not cause and effect. So the conclusion, really, it needs more research to really say, oh, don't, high fructose corn syrup is the worst substance in the world. It's something that none of us really need, and it's a source of calories that we probably don't need. It's, empty calories. It's another sweetener. But on the other hand, I don't think all of the bad things that have been attributed to it in different mediums are true. It's cheaper than sugar. It is easy to transport. It's used a lot. I mean, I guess that would be my biggest criticism of it, is that it's literally found its way into many foods, and it's added to the more hidden sugary things that are in foods. So it's like an added source of calories that we really kind of don't need. So, yeah. Then there's this whole question about, okay, did the increase in sugar cause this increase in weight gain? And I think it's just an increase in calories overall. Like if you look at that one graph that showed, what we were eating in 1960 compared to what we were eating in 2010, it showed an increase from a wide variety of foods and so on. So I don't think it was, just sugar. It, certainly added to it. And this is from the USDA and from CDC and from the NHANES nutrition surveys. It actually shows, a bit of a drop in sugar. And granted, this only goes up to 2010, but yeah. So I think has a lot more to do with the total amount of calories. So here are some more references. Oops, that's in your handout. And this just shows different sweeteners that have calories, what they are made up of, as far as fructose, glucose. So you can see that. And here are some of the sweeteners that are on the market now, and there are others too. But these are ones that are generally recognized as safe. So, yeah. I meant to say a little bit about mealtime, about food frequency of eating, because Have you read things about that at all? About like number of times of eating or intermittent fasting and that kind of thing? Yeah, I think the jury's kind of out on it, but it's an interesting topic and I think worth looking at. It has a lot of different definitions, like some describe an 18-hour fast and only eating, during different parameter of time. But I think it remains to be seen how it plays out. In general, I think we've gotten to be a culture that eats almost all the time. So there you go. I don't know. It's probably a happy medium there. So is there one type of diet that's best? These are, kind of timeless tips about that whole subject. Determine how many calories that you need. Keep some records for yourself. Determine, what you are eating. Or sometimes too, even look back to periods of time when you lost weight. What were you doing? Were you doing something differently? If you're, concerned about that. You won't go back to playing football necessarily, but looking at what you're doing now, and consider healthy eating as opposed to dieting. I think if you consider it as healthy eating, it seems a little bit less restrictive and a little bit more positive spin on it. Appropriate portions are often much smaller than what you think. So every once in a while, pull out a measuring cup and see what half a cup looks like, or see what a cup looks like, and see what a cup of a casserole looks like on a plate, or a cup of spaghetti. Yeah. And I mentioned some things that are really easy for folks to overeat, like things like rice to granola.
And are you suggesting white rice, brown rice, or does it matter?
Brown rice or wild rice is a little bit better.
Wild rice isn't rice.
Yeah, I know.
Grass
Sorry.
seed.
Yeah.
You want me to eat
Sorry.
grass seed?
Yeah.
Okay, you will.
But they have virtually the same number of calories. So, yeah. And the same amount of carbohydrate. So, be discriminating about your high-calorie favorite foods, but enjoy, should have been every bite, but every bit, that works. That works too. Yeah. But I would say, legalize everything. Let it be your choice what you're going to have. Make things easier by avoiding food triggers. Like for some people, that just means walking in the kitchen. So anyway, but food triggers, things that seem to prompt you to eat more. Write it down. Get plenty of low-calorie fluids. And that's it. Bye, Marty. That's it. Thank you all for being here. Yeah, we did pretty well time-wise, all in all. Anything else? Yeah.
I had a question on like flavorings for water. If you just get sick of water, there's like there's little droplets.
Yeah.